Hi, my name is Malcolm Frey and welcome to this video on ITIL LITE. First of all, let me just say that I'm the author of the ITIL LITE book, also author of Building a Service Management Department, which is kind of important. If you've got lots of processes, you really need somewhere to put them and someone to own them. The other book I've been working on recently was a step-by-step guide to building a CMDB. That was a collaborative, so that was kind of interesting to get some people from the industry together and put their minds to producing a practical guide to do a specific activity. But today I'm talking about ITIL LITE. And just quickly, why did I think of writing ITIL LITE? What was the thought behind it? And I was meeting with some folks one day, and ITIL-facing folks, and one of the things that came up was, I'm a kind of nervous because I don't think I could do the whole of ITIL. And somebody else said, I don't even know where to start. And then it occurred to me, it is complicated and it is frightening. And there is an expression that we should stick with, and that's fit for purpose. You don't have to implement the whole of ITIL LITE. You don't have to implement the whole of the processes or each individual one. I mean, there's about 30 of them for a start. So if you were going to put the whole lot in, it's going to take you years and years and years. So it's all about getting together where we need to start and getting that first rung. And that first rung may be enough for many of us. So let's quickly look at an ITIL LITE definition. ITIL LITE is an approach to implementing key components of ITIL v3 to ensure a sound basis, that's the key point, a sound basis for IT service management. Now you might do it as a starting point or you might do it as a completion point. The key is it's a sound basis for IT service management. And there's two ways we can approach this. One is a methodology, which is a set of rules, it's a set of ways of doing things. You can't change your methodology. It's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and there is no other way of doing it. That's not going to work. That just is not going to work. There are no two IT departments exactly the same for a start. So I think the other approach, which really was the key to V2 by the way, and that is it's a framework. A framework is a set of assumptions and concepts. It's a guide. It's not an absolute rule. It's a way of getting to a point that makes sense. Fit for purpose. Value for money. That's what it's all about. So I don't believe it's a methodology. I think if you look at ITIL as a methodology, then you will get confused because you'll be looking at 20, 30 processes and functions. And that's just too much. We can't handle that many. If you just look at the V3 components, you'll see there's three basic types. There's the governance processes, there's the operational processes, and there's those functions. When we put that lot together under the 5 key books, we end up with somewhere around about 30 components. And if you look at the 30 components, one of the things you'll notice is that they do follow a simple structure. It's all about identifying a strategy for a service, and then designing a service from that strategy, and then transitioning that service into live, and then operationally managing it on a day-to-day basis. It's 4 key elements. But to do that, we need 2 things. We need service management and we need infrastructure management. Service management to understand what the business needs, and infrastructure management to provide the resource so that that can be delivered to the customer as the customer wants it, when the customer wants it. Again, making sense that we spend the right amount of money at the right time. Why aren't we fully implementing ITIL? It was a curiosity to me. So I started to ask people, why aren't you doing it fully? Why have you decided not to? And the reason started from cost, particularly over the last year or two. Costs have got very, very tight. And whatever happens, it's going to cost you to implement ITIL. Because you're not going to magically do it. You're going to need at least a human resource to do some work on it, possibly some tools and technologies too, but certainly a human resource. So cost, maybe our budget right now doesn't allow us to do the whole thing, but we'd like to get service management better controlled. So therefore, cost is an issue. It's a valid issue. Maybe at the moment we just get as far as we can that makes sense to the business and the organisation. One of the things that ITIL sort of expounds is the idea of working with the customer and understanding the customer. But customer support is not always that easy to get. Very often the customer doesn't want to talk to us. Very often the customer says, look, what I want is dead easy. I want 7 by 24, 100% availability, and it's got to go real quick. It's real simple. Just go away and do it. And therefore it's difficult to get to some of the customers. Other customers may also be estranged for other reasons. They may be in other countries, they may be in other locations. It isn't that difficult. But strangely, sometimes the happy customers are the ones that tell us not to do anything. So imagine you go to talk to the customer and the customer says, no, don't change anything. I'm real happy with what we got right now. It works great, the service is great, don't touch it. Just do not touch it. Another one might be that you're looking at ISO 20000 and you say, I want to get to that level of ISO 20000. Well, you know what? You don't have to do all the processes to get there. You probably only need to look at about 8 or 9, maybe 10. So if we put in those 8 or 9, why would I make this step to the next 10, 15, 20? How do I convince my senior management? Your ISO 20000 can be a wonderful deliverable, but it can also hold you back a little bit if you're looking at full implementation. There's the time constraints. How long does it take? Will we all be doing this job in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years' time, however long it takes to do the whole thing? It's a huge question. It embraces the whole of IT and the business. So, time constraints are valid. And ownership. Nobody owns all 30 or thereabouts of the ITIL processes. They're shared out. Some of them are owned by the business even. For example, contingency planning may well be a business issue. And IT is just a contributor. It doesn't own it, it just contributes to it. Financial management could be the same. Even contract management, supplier management may be owned by somewhere else. So one of the reasons is we don't own it. And even within that stuff that IT does own, you can have various managers within IT owning pieces of it. You have to get all these managers together to conceptually agree ITIL and contribute towards the implementation. That's a big task. For many of us, we can only do what we own. That's where our boundaries are. So if you own, service desk, problem change, that kind of thing, then that's as far as you can go initially. So maybe that's one reason we go light, is to get a good starting point. Sometimes the projects just run out of steam. Lots of early returns, lots of low hanging cherries. We do a great job. But we run out of steam. The project runs out of steam. The only way to avoid that is to get a proper project manager who sets good interim targets that keeps the enthusiasm going. It's just too complex. I just can't get my head around all this stuff. Well, don't get your head around all the stuff. Just get your head around the stuff that matters, and you can move along and reduce the complexity by planning. We implemented V2. And I told my boss V2 was the best thing ever. Now how do I go back to my boss and say, there's V3 out now and it's even better still? My boss's reaction is going to be, how often is this going to happen? When does V4 come out? When does V5 come out? Maybe we should wait. It's very difficult sometimes to convince people to go from V2 to V3. However, what you can do is look at the V3 components and the V2. So if, for example, you put in capacity management, change management, whatever, you can look at the V2 version, look at the V3 and identify the differences just in those processes. So bring the V2s up to the level of the V3s, and then maybe you can expand on from there. So, cost, no customer support, ISO 20000 limitations, time constraints, ownership, running out of steam, it's too complex. We've already put V2 in. That's hard work. And they're good reasons why we may not fully implement V2. So, what we want to do is to make make manageable the unmanageable. And that's a key. Make manageable the unmanageable. We want to simplify planning. And the best way to do that is to work on it in chunks. And ITIL LITE, and then maybe expand on ITIL LITE using the same concept moving forward. We want to bring a new perspective to ITIL. One that says, framework is the key. We want to reignite a stagnant situation right now. Sometimes one of the reasons you might want to go to ITIL LITE is to get some enthusiasm back in the organisation, to get some people thinking, yeah, we want to do things. There's something more than just answering the phone or managing changes. Removing the confusion. Who owns change? Who owns capacity? It's a good reason to implement ITIL LITE to identify the ownership. I did say a minute ago that ownership is a limitation. It also is a way to understand what we're doing, where we're doing it. It gives us a neater component, a neater way of doing things. Most of all, ITIL LITE will remove the fear and confusion from ITIL. I honestly believe that implementing ITIL is a great thing to do. I equally believe to start off from day one and say we're going to implement the whole thing is a dangerous approach, because in most cases it's just not possible. I hope you found it informative. If you want any further information, please visit bestmanagementpractice.com. Thank you.